Hey, Derek Depko here of Bestseller Secrets, here with Amy Freund, talking about the pros and cons of traditional versus self-publishing. And I have only myself done the self-publishing route. And that said, I definitely see benefits to traditional publishing as well. I see it as one of those things where it's like there's different paths for different people based off of your goals. And I'm grateful that Amy reached out to me, offered to come on and share some of her insights. Amy, I give a little bit about what I know about you. You can add anything if I missed something.
Yeah.
You started publishing 2016, working your way up from editorial assistant to brands editor, senior editor, now publisher. And so you have that experience in the traditional publishing world, as well as now also doing self-publishing. So you've kind of seen it from both perspectives. Anything important that that you want to share with people a little bit about your backstory there that I didn't cover?
Oh, no, you actually covered it really well. So, yeah, with publishing, you sort of, the entry level is always at that assistant level. So I started in the licensed branding area, which is a bit of an unusual part for traditional publishing because you're working with things like, Disney, and you're working with, say, Warner Brothers, DreamWorks, different companies that sort of help you get a bit of a lift in sales. So more than just novels and working straight with authors. So I've had a little bit of a different experience in publishing, which I think has lent quite well to going into the ebook area because, yeah, it is quite different, but also similar in ways. So, yeah, I'm excited to chat about it and see if I can answer any questions anyone has as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And we wanted to do it live here so you can ask any questions. I know a few questions came in via email. And if you're on here at any point in time, go ahead and drop any questions that you have for us in the chat. If it's related to publishing, traditional versus self-publishing, that type of thing, we can cover it. If it's not totally related to that, we'll see if there's a way to tie it in. With that, Amy, I have some questions and I'm curious if you want to kick this off. You mentioned you had some slides, kind of starting high level of your perspective on some of the pros and cons or the difference between traditional versus self-publishing.
Yeah, I'm happy to share them if that's useful. I'll just pop up to the top. So pretty much what I can see would be, well, what I've really experienced as a big difference between traditional versus ebook is really the pros of being in a big publishing house is you do get that distribution. So in terms of, I guess, when we're talking ebooks, a traditional published book will also become an ebook. It will also become an audio book now, as the audio book genre grows as well. So that distribution that you just aren't able to get as a solo author is something that's really important as part of a big traditional publishing house, as well as foreign rights and opportunities. So something for me down in Oz is very important, is being able to, I guess, expand that scope of who is reading your book. So if you've got English language, they can export English language rights, normally UK, US, they're our big ones that we export to, as well as foreign language rights. And those so there are these really big book fairs that happen in Germany and Italy every year. So that's when the team will go and actually start selling your book to those different areas and really, I guess, be on your side to get your book everywhere that it can be. The marketing, the sales strategies. So another pro there is that you do have a whole team that is supporting you and behind you with your books. So I guess one thing also to remember with traditional publishing is that not every book will be a bestseller. Some books are made to literally just fill a gap in a publishing program, but you always will have sales and marketing that are behind you, but they also do have those contacts for interviews, for, reading copies, for advanced unboxings, for a lot of that type of strategies there. And they do have an inbuilt audience in their social media, which does help too. The editorial support and guidance as well is something which I think is quite an important part, because a lot of these, yes, like we know that we can probably do these separately as well. But the editorial support and guidance that especially a new author will get with a publishing house is something that is quite a big pro, well, in my mind, because these experts will help you to drive your book to be the best it can be. And it may be that then they change quite a bit of the book, which can sometimes be quite stressful. But if you trust the process, it does really help. And that also talking on marketing and sales, that launch strategy, using the strength of their book publishing list to really leverage your book. Because if you might be a new, say, middle grade author, so that's sort of the junior author area, but they can really launch your book and say, we already do Captain Underpants, this is just like it. So it's a lot of that goes into it too. And of course, that there are ebook and audiobook opportunities with that as well. So I've just seen it chat, self-published, goes written. Yeah. So actually one of the, this leads me really well, Susie, into the cons, I guess, and these are just top level things that we'll keep chatting on as well, is author agents. So I know that's the last one, but I'll chat on that now. Representation is very hard to get, especially in a big market like the US, which I think a lot of you are from. A lot of those big 4, big 5 publishing houses, they really rely on their agents to get new manuscripts. It's very difficult to get your foot in the door as a new author. It's a little bit different in my market in that they still do accept unsolicited manuscripts, which is a manuscript coming from a non-agent area or not from someone that has been recommended. Of course, there's lots of awards, which you can always put your manuscript in for those different prizes. And that does sometimes help just get your foot in the door that little bit. But it is quite hard in terms of the traditional publishing scheme. So that is where I think ebooks and self-publishing definitely have a plus, because if you do get quite a big audience in your ebook, sometimes it does get picked up by traditional publishers. Like they see it go off and then they think, okay, this is somewhere that we can go into. There's also quite some genre restrictions in traditional publishing. So in the ebook space especially, I've noticed that there's a really big area for, biographies, for a lot of self-help and small niche areas that still do quite well. Whereas in a traditional publishing house, you're thinking about, okay, what's someone wanting to browse at a bookstore? What will they pick up? What's going to be something that they will see and go, yep, I want that. And a lot of the time, those books do sort of fall to the wayside. Even something like fantasy, you do have your set areas, set genres that people will buy straight into and also get ghost writers to create. So there is quite a restriction there. And the royalties in terms of self-publishing versus a traditional royalty is very low. So you're probably, well, in my market, I know for sure that it's up to, 12%, anything over 12% as a author. That would be amazing. Of course, you get quite a higher royalty when you do get into those other areas of the market, say foreign rights. But yeah, for that, this is where self-publishing comes into its own, is that you can start off, as we've always been talking with from the start, with no following, no backing, and actually get quite a good lucrative business going for yourself. And sometimes that does lead to the traditional publishing sort of route as well. Just see another one. So,
and Amy, before we go to this next part, if you can go back the prior slide. This is fantastic. Yeah. So this lays it out really well. We're talking about traditional publishing here. The way I look at it is with a lot of industries, it's like the more that falls on your shoulders or your responsibility, greater responsibility is control. And that can be a pro and con, right? So if you're self-publishing, you have a lot more control over things. At the same time, you also have a lot more responsibility to do the editing or get an editor, the cover design, right? You don't have that whole team that's there. You got to put that together, the team, or you are the team. And I recommend definitely, getting some sort of support if you're self-publishing. So we'll get into self-publishing in a moment, but that's kind of the big takeaway that I got, is that, you're going to get less royalties, bigger restrictions, harder to get the foot in the door, a lot more barriers to entry. In exchange, you get that distribution, the foreign rights, the assistance, and things like that. One other thing here is what's the time frame? I mean, it probably varies between publishers, but let's say an author comes to a publisher and they go, I got this manuscript. From the time they, let's say, submit their manuscript to getting accepted, to going through the process, and then actually seeing it on bookshelves, is that year long? Like what's the time frame for that?
It's interesting because it actually does depend sometimes on the manuscript. So if it comes onto an editor's desk and it's just amazing and it makes sense, it's topical, yet we need to just go, go, go. If you're in a smaller publishing house that has a little bit more flexibility in the list, because the publishing list does get set months in advance. So you probably do, 6 months to 12 months ahead of schedule, just in terms of timing. And bigger publishing houses work almost 2 years in advance as well. So if there's something that's amazing and they see it and they want it, they could maybe put it back in here and there. But it really is, from acquisitions. So when you get a manuscript to acquisitions, sometimes that's about maybe 3 months. And then from there, if they do like it and this happens and everybody's keen, then you'll probably hear back and they'll send you a letter of offer. The letter of offer would be something that, the publisher says, yep, we'd like to publish this. And then they may or may not show you your advance that you'll receive, which is the money that you'll get on top of any royalties. So really they give you the advance, and then it takes a lot of time anyway for royalty. We'll talk about that in a second. And if you accept that, then you go to the contract stage. There's a bit of back and forth. With big publishing, that could take a few months as well, because they've got a big legal team that they have to go through. And then for the publishing and making, maybe that's 3 to 6 months. And then once you actually get it to the printer, maybe that's 60 days. So it's anywhere between maybe a year and a half. It is quite a long process. So that is definitely something where you do get the up in publishing on your own, is that you can get something to market quite quickly. But yeah, it really does depend, because some of the places I've worked at, 6 months and someone's got a book ready to go. But that is not a typical time frame. You're normally looking at about a year and a half as a minimum.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I think that sets some context. Obviously, there's exceptions. Some could be quicker, some could be longer, but having kind of that medium reference range of what to expect. I know there's questions about replay. Yes, this is being recorded. And then I know there's some questions relating to traditional publishing and things like that came in. I'm feeling though like it'd probably be better that we get through the next part and the pros and cons of self-publishing, and then we can dive into some more specific questions. So you can go on to the next slide here.
Yes. Oh, and sorry, Pepper, you are correct. That was what I meant to say. An advance is on the royalties of your book, not on top. So you receive an advance, say that you are doing that. And then if your book, sells out of the first print run, then you'll receive your royalties. So it's a little bit of a back and forth. And yes, Stacey, they are rare on nonfiction. That is quite a different area to what I've been in terms of traditional publishing as well. And just to show you this next slide, so this was actually put together by Hachette Australia, and it's a super helpful guide, I guess, flowchart to the whole life cycle of a book. So just to show you the different levels and complexities that can be included in traditional publishing. I mean, you can kind of see when you look at this why it's such a slow process, but also it's very helpful in terms of seeing exactly where all the touch points are, and if you are going on your own, where you can sort of tighten up ones where things aren't needed, but also the help that you will get when you do have a team. So from the author to the publisher, yeah, a lot of the time it is through an agent, or just you go straight to them yourself, and then they'll manage it through a project editor, the legal, contracts, design, production, audio and picture research. Picture research is really more for that nonfiction area. And so when you sort of look over the other side in terms of rights, publicity, marketing, sales, stock control, distribution, and the book buys, that's really where you see a lot of the strength in actually going with a traditional publisher, because that is what they are great at, and that's something that you can't really replicate, I guess, on your own without a really big group of people around you. And this is something I can always screenshot and send through, because yeah, I've always found it so helpful, and all the information that it holds is something that I've been showing where my company is. Some people are quite new to books, so this is something I've been showing them all the time to see exactly all the touch points in the process.
Yeah, this is great. It's also useful. I mean, if you are self-publishing, it's useful to still see steps in the process. You might not literally do every single thing in there, but realizing that either you will be doing one of these roles or you'll be getting assistance for help with some of these things. An obvious thing would be something like the design of the book and things like that. Cool. So now, what are some of the pros and cons? And I can flesh out my own perspective on this, but based off of what you've seen so far, Amy, when it comes to self-publishing, I mean, you could kind of flip some of it around, just say, pros of versus cons. But what would you say for self-publishing then, pros and cons?
Yeah, so definitely in terms of the royalty and the money coming, pretty much straight to you, besides that little bit that may go to the different distribution channels, it is really good in that sense. You're not restricted on the genre so much because you can create what you would like to create. It may not necessarily become a bestseller in a really niche area, but it is a really liberating thing to think that you can do that on your own as well. Obviously, going back to that design area as well, that is a really interesting part too, because design can really be controlled by the sales team, the marketing team, as well as the publisher's opinion rather than the author at all. So as an author, you may get a bit of a say in how your book looks, and you may be able to say, no, I'm not happy, but a lot of the time that's decided in-house. So of course, going on your own, you get to decide exactly how your book's going to look. You get to be that creative director on how it's going to look and how it will get out to the world. Of course, the speed, all the cons of the big publishing house is something that is a really great pro in self-publishing, because the speed to market is just next to none in terms of being able to get it out there. And your distribution is automatically quite widespread. So even from Australia, I can self-publish and promote on Amazon US, which to get into the US market from Australia is very difficult in terms of that traditional publishing scheme as well. And also audiobooks is an amazing area of self-publishing that I'm really, learning and coming into. And that is a huge opportunity for someone if you are like owning that entire scope. I mean, you may have to give a little bit to whoever if you want someone to do your narration, or of course the person that's doing all your sound mixing, but that is another great area too. And it's really just being able to control that whole process. I found doing self-publishing that you just don't get in a traditional publishing house, because as an author, you really are at the whim of what the house wants, what their, list looks like, what their reputation means, and your book is falling into that piece. So doing it on your own, of course, you get to set the rules and the standards for yourself completely.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much an inversion of the traditional publishing route in terms of pros and cons. So, to recap, the greater royalties that can also make a big difference when it comes to doing things like ads. I was talking to Thomas Umstad about this, and because he works with traditional publishing, traditionally published authors, also some self-publish, and it's like doing something like running Amazon ads just might not make sense for you, paying for that out of pocket if you're getting maybe at most 12% royalties, versus if you could make 70% royalties for a self-published ebook, then it could be much more profitable, or at least the chance of profit when you're self-published. So even just the approach that you take. Now the flip side is, well, okay, a traditional publisher might have more channels or assistance for marketing and advertising. Maybe they put some of their own funds into helping that. So there's all of these different trade-offs. That the idea is it's going to affect your strategy and your approach, and what you hear someone recommend might work better for a self-published author or a traditionally published author, but not necessarily both, because you got to understand the numbers there, which would then also be things like if you want to experiment in writing in different genres, maybe there's a hot trend and, you want to be quick to market. You want something out this month. You want to take advantage of something happening in the world, and you want to quickly get a book out there that you can self-publish. Well, that's it's probably not going to, or a book that you want to get out there quickly published, probably not going to work. The traditional publishing route might not be an issue if you have just sci-fi novel. Doesn't matter if it comes out this year or next year or 5 years, but if there's certain maybe things for your business, your brand, you want to experiment with different trends or writing to market, or there's some sort of new subgenre of romance that you want to dabble in or whatever, then you can get things out there quickly. And so that would be going in favor of that speed in favor of self published. And then distribution, you mentioned Amazon. So you will be able to get on the biggest sales platform out there, which is Amazon. You would, with self-publishing, you wouldn't necessarily, unless you work with a company or there's some hybrid publishing options that can help with this, would be something like getting in an airport bookstore or getting in a lot of bookstores. It takes a little more effort. You can learn how to do it, but you're not going to have that whole team behind you doing something like that. So if there's questions, kind of pros and cons, you can keep it coming in. I know some questions are coming in now. I'm curious, Amy, could you give like a high level overview of like, who do you think traditional publishing is usually a better fit for, versus who would you say self-publishing is usually a better fit for?
Yeah, so I guess for anyone that is working in that fiction, maybe not so much fantasy and sci-fi, but that general fiction, we call it YA, so young adult, that area. I wouldn't say poetry, maybe a bit of self-help. And I've noticed in the chats about low content books, and yes, actually, that is a great area of traditional publishing, but most of the time they do it themselves, which is a little bit difficult. So yeah, I would say anyone that is creating fiction for children, especially if anyone on this chat is doing kids books, picture books, of course, anything like that is 100% preferred for traditional publishing, because it doesn't translate as well, especially a picture book, to something that's read on a screen. But also they are always wanting more content in that area. So anything like that, I would highly recommend. I think maybe not if you're doing like poetry or long prose, any sort of business acumen book. I mean, money is quite a trend. So anything to do with like money saving, money help, all of that area is definitely growing. Anyone that is looking to do graphic novels, manga, yes, I just saw mysteries. Yep, mysteries is a big one for publishing. They do have their set people. It's funny because some of those names, they have ghostwriters that write under those big, mystery names. So I think definitely that area as well. And yeah, it is a little bit tricky because sometimes there are exceptions to the rules, but I would say, yeah, that anyone that's doing mainly, I just saw for Timothy, general literary fiction on a historical topic. Yeah, that's good too. So pretty much I wouldn't go into the romance section, because they do, like Mills and Boon, say, for example, they know what they want to write, and a lot of the time they just farm that out to their ghostwriters. So it would be those general, like the mystery topics, anything that isn't too sci-fi. Historical fiction, especially like surrounding World War II, has been quite a big trend, especially in my area, that's been going on for a bit of time. And really, like, where my experience lies is in children's publishing. So 100% that area is always really big, and something that I would recommend for traditional. I did notice a question on ISBN numbers and do we need them? I would personally, because an ISBN number gets you out in the world. It's something that can be picked up no matter what, and you can always use it, and the internet understands it. And then if it is doing well, you can actually, someone will actually be able to track it on their reporting system. And if it is doing really well, they might say, oh, what's this book? Where is it? And if they see that it's an ebook, it might be something that they're interested in, which is from a earlier question as well about.
Hey, Amy, yeah, we can take this one question at a time. So let's it might not be clear. So if we go fiction, or let's just say genre, let's start with traditional publishing, best genres, self-publishing, best genres. Make it really clear about which ones, which, if we were going by genre. So starting with traditional, what are the top recommended genres to consider traditional publishing?
Yes, sorry, I'm getting excited there. Junior fiction, middle grade fiction, graphic novels, 100%, picture books. So that's my expertise, would be those 100%. As well as, if you're looking for that adult area, self-help is still quite a big area in that as well. We've got here literary fiction, and I'm not 100% across it. So I would say more that historical fiction that does really well. But a lot of the time they do have their key people. So for ebooks, well, for non-traditional publishing, sorry, I would say romance, definitely, sci-fi, fantasy, poetry, anything that's to do with a business, and also really small niche areas of self-help. So say stress management, that would be something that's more of a niche self-help than a bigger self-help, as well as mystic kind of books, so like your tarot books and things like that that are sort of growing and growing. I'd say that's better in the e-publishing area.
Awesome, cool. And I want to make sure Timothy's question was answered. So general literary fiction on a historical topic. Can that go either way, or more preference for one or the other?
Either way. I really think either way, because and it also just depends on the publisher and what their scope of their list is, and if they do have space for that. So I'd say that's probably more for a smaller publishing house than going to a big publishing house for something like that as a first-time author.
Okay, cool. And then a question was sent in, and this might also address some other questions as well as pros and cons. The person said, I get lots of positive rejection emails. Why is it so hard to get a positive? I am interested. Now, we can't necessarily know this particular author situation, so I'm going to translate that into something that might be more applicable to anyone here. What would be, let's say, maybe top 3 reasons, or the biggest reasons why an author is rejected for a traditional publishing deal?
Oh, that's a great question. I guess the top 3, number 1 might be flooded market, and they've seen it before. So it might be a great idea. It might sound like, yep, this would sell. This is awesome, but it's been done before and it's not new or innovative. And that's something where a lot of the time the traditional publishing house might go, do we have time to take a punt on a new author in an area that we know? Or should we just get a ghostwriter or ask one of our authors that we already have on our list to create in that area? Another one may be as well that it's not 100% up to scratch. And because they are just so busy and they just need things out, they may not actually be reading the whole thing. So they may just read the synopsis and go, oh, yeah, that's lovely. Like, that's really nice. But they just don't actually have the time to take to read it. And it comes again to that representation of, if you have an agent, they can definitely be pushing that for you. So that is something that I would recommend in that area as well. And another one, again, I guess it kind of falls back to the first one, which is that they think they can do it themselves. So what makes it, why do they have to go with you for a story or an idea? Like, obviously they're not going to take your idea, but what makes working with you so special that they need to take a punt and do this? So it's really being able to, in your author letter, bring that hook to why you're the right person for this book. And yes, it may be something that they could do on their own, or they could get someone else, but this is why they need to go with you.
Great. Yeah. I mean, it seems like there's this core essence of, there's got to be something unique that you're bringing to the table, where they can't just be like, oh, we got plenty of this already, or we could easily just, get a ghostwriter to do something similar. And then how much of a role, in your experience, does the size of the author's platform, if they're brand new versus the following, what are they looking at in terms of, what the author's bringing to the table in terms of marketing and promotion?
Yeah, so a lot of the time they are more willing to go ahead with someone that does have already, say, any type of profile. So if you're an artist and you've got quite a big artist profile, people are listening to you, watching you, they're more likely to pay attention because they think, okay, we've got a set audience or custom base already built in. If you are just literally brand new and super green into the industry, it's better to go through something like a prize, or really pay attention to when they are accepting unsolicited manuscripts. And that will really help you get your foot in the door that way, because at least they may read it. And if they do send you a lovely rejection, you can always ask them. And it's something that even I've done as an author on my own. I've said, do you have any feedback for me? And a lot of the time they might say, no, and that's fine. But someone might give you just that little bit of feedback. And I had an author send me a great project. I had everything in there, but the feedback was that exactly, it didn't show the reason to go with them over just the company saying, oh, we could just do this cheaper, or we could just do this ourselves. But, it's really being able to hook yourself in. And sometimes you don't need that social media presence. Sometimes it's just making a great case for yourself in your pitch.
Yeah. So I'd imagine with almost anything, the more you can demonstrate that you can help drive book sales, because that's what they want. So if you have a following, if you have a platform, then that's obviously going to give you an advantage. It also sounds like, though, they might be willing to work with a newer author, someone without a platform, if they see the need for that. Is that correct? So, I mean, I want to make sure, like, if someone's going, well, I don't have a big audience or much of an audience, could it still be worth them, pursuing the traditional publishing route?
Yeah, definitely. It is just a lot harder, I guess. So you might see it as well and get frustrated. I know sometimes I do a celebrity's face sort of plastered on a book where you're like, oh, I could have written there, or I've got something way better than that. Why does that happen? And again, it's back to that platform. So, I mean, don't get discouraged, because it is very difficult to get something published traditionally. But I still think if you've got a manuscript ready, you've shopped it around, you've edited it, you've had a couple of people read it, they love it, there is no harm in putting it online, getting some, great sales, or even getting a little bit, start growing, and then going to a publishing house and saying, hey, I sent you this a while ago, I've self-published it, it's doing this well, are you interested now? Because a lot of the time they might go, oh, okay, actually, yeah, we can see that there is an audience for it, and they've taken our advice on board.
Awesome. Yeah. And I like what you said about asking for feedback. For the person who sent that email, I mean, ultimately, they might be able to tell you why they didn't accept it. And I can tell you, I typically won't give someone feedback unless they ask for it. It's actually usually more polite. I mean, I know some people are like, why didn't you tell me why you didn't accept it? It's like, well, if you ask, I might tell you, but also they might not tell you. There's a good chance they might not tell you, because that's taking time out of their day. But if they're feeling pretty generous, they might let you know, and you might find you get that specific feedback. And that's key, because you might think, well, is it the manuscript? Well, maybe the manuscript is great, it's just not what they're looking for, right? Or maybe it is what they're looking for, but it is the manuscript, or it's this, that, or they want to see more, they do want the bigger platform, or whatever it is. So that'll help you, kind of tailor what's going on in terms of, any adjustments to make if something keeps getting rejected. This is a great question here about, can you get a book published with a publisher after you self-publish? What's the possibility of that?
Yeah, definitely. So it actually doesn't restrict you, which I think sometimes is a misconception there, that, oh, I've already self-published it, so it means that I can't take it to a traditional publishing house. And that's really not the case. It actually sometimes does help. So if you do have sales that you can show in your pitch document, if you do have an audience that wants more. And I did see earlier about, do publishers look at Amazon and ebook sales and see if things are trending? And yeah, in my experience, we have gone on and seen what's trending in different areas. And that's not just on something like that. It is, what audiobooks are doing well, and are all of these published audiobooks. As I said, big publishing houses, they're probably 2 years ahead. So probably not them, because they have a clear vision of how they want to work. But small publishers that are able to be a little bit more agile and flexible in their list will definitely be looking and can see where maybe there's an opportunity that they can pick something up.
Yeah. And I love this question, because it can be then a strategy where, if I was looking to get traditionally published and I was facing rejection after rejection, I wouldn't just throw in the towel. I would go, well, let me go self-publishing then. Let me prove the book's worth. Let me build an audience. Let me make sales. Then when I come back to a traditional publisher, I can go, look, it's selling, it's doing well. And the proof is in the pudding. They can actually see that it's getting sales, because the thing is, put yourself in the publisher's shoes. They're going to invest a lot of resources into a manuscript, and there's never guarantees in life. So they are doing a risk benefit analysis and going, all right, can we take a risk on this? Well, the more you can mitigate the risk by showing them that, okay, well, this is a trending topic, it's a unique angle, it's already selling, if not your book, obviously, if it's not published yet, but similar books, or whatever it is, to just give them that confidence to say, yeah, it's worth putting resources behind it. And that could be going self-publishing and getting it out there, proving that you also know how to market books, that there's a demand for the book and that you're capable of marketing it. And I actually had a friend, Tommy, who he has a children's book series. I don't know if he's got the whole series out now or the first book. It's traditionally published, doing really well. I got to interview him, check back in with him. But years ago, he self-published the book. Now, maybe the traditionally published version, they modified it or changed it, but he started with the self-publishing route. Now it's traditionally published children's book author, right? So absolutely, you can go that path, and that can make a very good kind of stepping stone type of thing for many people.
Exactly. And you will learn a lot in that as well when you're doing your own self-publishing, especially when it comes to things, as you were saying, with even the manuscript itself. Like maybe you put it online and you get a few reviews and you think, oh, okay, this isn't maybe what people are wanting or expecting. Maybe I need to pivot. Maybe I need to change up and look into how I can make it the best I can be. And especially, like, I know I keep talking about time, and they are just so that it needs to be that, you know, surefire hit. And I think definitely if you can show that you're willing to put in the effort to market yourself as well, and that you're able to do that, that is a big plus for them, because then they think they won't have to do all that hauling, especially if it is, and this isn't a bad thing, but if it is a list filler, so a book that isn't going to do like bestseller around the world, but it is a great book that deserves to be, you know, in a actual published format, then if you can help market it and make it even better, then how good is that? And I think they really appreciate that too.
Yeah, perfect. Then we saw this question earlier from Susie. It's about what's the best way to find a publisher, and do I need an agent? And I'm going to kind of elaborate on that because it makes me think, okay, do I find the publisher first and then go to an agent, or do I find an agent and they shop it out to, they know the publisher? You know, what's that whole process if you want to pursue traditional publishing? You know, what are the initial next steps that someone would take to start finding or getting with a traditional publisher?
Yes, this is actually also a little bit of a tricky part, and don't get discouraged if you do want to look for an agent, but agents themselves get so many, you know, just unsolicited manuscripts and people coming to them that they do their own culling process. So you may have a great book and a great idea and go to an agent and they say, okay, our books are closed. Actually, we're not accepting any more people. Or they read it and they sort of push you back. So if you want to go for those big publishing houses, the ones that we all know, you definitely need to be on an agent's list, but getting on an agent's list is tricky. I always just search, you know, agent, you know, publishing agents, blah, or going to a local writers center and doing those writer workshops. A lot of those, there'll be agents there, there'll be actual authors there who have been published. And if they like what you're doing, they'll go, hey, I'll connect you to my agent. You know, I actually think this could be great. And getting your foot in the door that way is also really helpful. With smaller publishing houses, I know everyone's looking for that big bestseller and just getting it out there. So they're always fixing on the bigger houses. Doesn't mean that you can't get big sales and a really good standing with a small publishing house. So if you can't get in with an agent, you're finding it difficult to get them to actually pick you up, then I would go to those smaller publishing houses, see when they're accepting manuscripts, do they have prizes, you know, and working with them in conjunction with, of course, something like a writer's center, where you can get feedback on your novel, but when you're also working with other authors who may have been published and have these connections, that's where I think the most important part is. And yes, if you want to go with the big one, you have to be with an agent. Of course, there's, you know, excuses to that rule, but a lot of the time, and I'd go small first.
Yeah, that's great. So a couple takeaways. One is, I was thinking this, and you confirmed it. It's like, oh, you know, if I was looking for an agent, you know, I'm skilled enough at cold pitching and things like that. I also realize like that's a challenging skill set to be able to, when someone's receiving tons of submissions, to be just another person who's sending in their manuscript or their pitch or their whatever. So I think, you know, yeah, if you can meet someone in person, you know, going to any type of writing event where you know there's going to be agents there, you can see someone. I'm an introvert, and even I appreciate that. Yeah, you just kind of sometimes make a deeper connection if you're actually face to face, sitting down over lunch with someone, the odds of getting that foot in the door with an agent through that way, and or going and connecting with other authors who are traditionally published, and then they make that referral, as you mentioned. So thinking anything that you can do to create that deeper connection. And then you also mentioned this a couple times now. It's a great idea, looking for when they're accepting manuscripts, when they're actually, asking for them, offering prizes, awards, different things like that, that can then lead to publishing deals. So that's, something, anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, and I think I'm just going back to that whole idea of if you do want to get in with an agent, I think the big one would be that if you can go to writers events. So we have Australian Writers Centre here, and they put on a lot of publishing events throughout the year, but there are also other small writers centres that even if you just search like Writers Centre and then your area that you live, if you start going to those, a lot of the time there'll be maybe the same editors or even authors that are giving up their time to help people with their unpublished manuscripts. And if you go enough and, you show them your manuscript enough times or you talk to them enough times, then you'll be able to build that connection with that person. It might even be a friendship at the start that then slowly goes, hey, I just want to ask you, how did you get in with your agent? Like, can I speak to that agent? Or even reaching out on Instagram if you're following an author that you really admire that has a similar area to you, going to them, hey, I write and I've got a very similar style to you in an area. Can I just ask who your agent is or how you actually got to be with your agent? And a lot of the time people will be quite open and willing to help in that sense as well. So yeah, I think it's starting small and then growing eventually to get to that traditional publishing house, but it is a long process.
Yeah, perfect. And then there's a question that came in, and I'm going to sort of summarize it where, one of the benefits of traditional publishing is that distribution, right? But let's say someone is self-publishing. Is there a way? I know that there are also some hybrid publishers. We haven't covered that, but for anyone curious, hybrid publishers, kind of like services, like sort of the idea is to blend some of the best of self-publishing and traditional publishing. But is there a way for an author who is self-published to get some distribution? Is there a service they can pay for? Can they hire someone? Is there anything that they can do if they want to get that bigger distribution that they would normally get with a traditional publisher?
Yeah, the distribution part's a bit interesting because, a lot of the time, if we're thinking just ebooks, then definitely, just putting it on all the sites and then putting that little bit of marketing money behind it to sort of get your going to the top area and also looking in those niches that I know I always hear everyone talking about. But if you do actually want to print your own book and you think, do you know what, I actually want to get this to places, if you say do a small run, 100 or 200 copies, it is going to be a little bit expensive. And actually taking it to small local bookstores yourself and just asking. I know there are a lot of freelance people that do book selling where you can get on a list and then they go and they can sell your book, but that is expensive. It's a bit difficult. I don't really know that area 100%, but I know for myself, actually a book that I published last year, which I have in my shelf over here, was I found the lady on Instagram. She does paper craft. It was really exciting, really fun. Found out that she printed her own book. She went on to, I think it was one of the crowdfunding sites. I can't remember which one. And she crowdfunded the money to publish her book. She printed it, had 3,000 sales, and she also had it distributed so she was in Adelaide, which is a smaller, city, but she had it in maybe 50 bookstores. So for us, we're like, oh, surefire win. She's already printed it. She's got people that are interested. She's got a big Instagram following, and we picked it up, redesigned it, and printed it. So there's actually something I forgot to say, crowdfunding sites. If you are very keen and you just think, you know what, I just want to print it. I want it to be a hard book. I'm not getting anywhere with submissions, anywhere with these acquisitions and it's all too much. Try and do a crowdfunding and then offer, one of it could be, if you put $5, I'll send you a bookmark, or I'll send you this and that. And then when you print the book, of course, you have those free copies. We actually found 3 authors through crowdfunding sites. So that's also a really interesting and big area for, if you even look on there now and you look at books, you know, there were so many interesting ones. And one that we were given was an author that's well respected forwarded us a crowdfunding site and said, have you seen this? It's perfect for your audience.
Cool.
And you can even do that yourself. Make a crowdfunding, start getting people interested and excited, and then forward that to a publisher and say, hey, you know, I'm doing this crowdfunding. I've got this much behind me. You know, are you interested?
Yeah, that's great. You know, I've known about crowdfunding, you know, certainly to help fund the publishing of a self-publishing of a book, but I had never considered that, you know, the success of a crowdfunding campaign could directly translate to getting a traditionally published book, or getting a traditional book deal, because just like selling a bunch of copies of a book, normally they look at that and they go, clearly there's a demand for this. You're doing well. People are buying it. You know, there's one takeaway here, which is like, to me, whether you're traditional publish or self-publish or even hybrid publish, there's always an element of knowing how to market yourself, right? Even if you go to a traditional publisher and they handle all that, you still got to get your foot in the door. You still got to be able to present, this is what makes this book unique. Here's what some of the initial readers have said about the book, you know, whatever you can do to like, present yourself in a way where they go, oh, I'm interested in that, versus, oh, this is one of just thousands of other manuscripts that we get. So knowing how to stand out, knowing how to make an impression, and knowing how to prove that, hey, you have something that can sell. And then you can either just do it yourself, or you go with a traditional publisher, but knowing how to market your book, which is probably an obvious thing for people in my audience. You know myself as me being the book marketing guy, that's an important thing, because I feel like, and you could correct me if you say this isn't your experience, Amy. And I mean, if someone really just doesn't know the first thing about marketing themselves, I still feel like they got to know the relationship building skills or something. Like, could a person just be like horrible at marketing, relationship building, and still somehow get a traditional published deal and sell a bunch of copies? Or do the publishers still kind of expect them to interact, maybe do interviews, talk to their fans, any of that sort of stuff as well?
Yeah, I think the trouble with being an author and having difficulty, you know, interacting, is that they really rely on your words and your presence. So say if you're an illustrator, I've had many introverted illustrators that are just shocking and all of that, that people will look at their artwork online and they'll get excited by that, and that speaks for them. So I think the hardest part is being able to put yourself out there. I mean, even doing something like this is my first podcast, and it is, you know, a bit stressful, but it is always those things where you can put yourself out there and just try different things. It might be a fail, it might be a plus, but even if you can just do a 2-minute, hey, this is something about me. And I mean, I know I personally hate TikTok, but you see all those ones where they just point to words. If you just stood there and pointed and you wrote what you wanted to say, and sort of, you know, really crafted different stories and things, if you are using social media, like really crafting your Instagram, and maybe your images are curated and bits of your text, then that does help. But I think always knowing how to market yourself is important. If you're an illustrator, a lot easier, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that you know, I can relate. You know, being an introvert myself, I was not in love with the idea of marketing, and I totally appreciate this idea of like, I started out as a musician. I just want to write music. That's what I'm good at. Someone else can handle the marketing. Someone else can study the business side. I just let them do that. And there is some place for that in the book writing world. Hey, look, marketing's not my thing. I'm good at telling stories. I'm just going to tell the stories and let, you know, the publisher handle that. Okay, that will work to a degree. You still got to know how to like talk to an agent or get an agent or talk to another author who can make the referral. Like at some point, it's going to probably require interacting with people, connecting with your fans and things like that, at least if you want to maximize your odds of success. So I'm not here to lecture on, you know, common sense stuff like, hey, develop good people skills. Like I would consider Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People to be just an essential type of reading and life skill sort of thing. I would like to get back to like, some tactical things when it comes to publishing. It'll probably wrap up here in the next 5 to 10 minutes. I saw from Elliot 20 years ago, I had 2 humor books picked up by Pan Macmillan Australia. They were parodies. I've completed and designed a self-published book, not yet published. Can I, or how can I sell the foreign rights, especially to a publisher in Australia? And I'm trying to figure out, Elliot, is that the foreign rights to the self-published book that you're about to release? I'm not clear on what that was. And
also, congratulations. That's an amazing opportunity. And in terms of foreign rights, that actually is something that an agent can also help you with. So seeing as you do have that background, maybe it is just reaching out to an agent or reaching back out to Pam Mac and saying, hey, remember me, or something like that. I'm looking at doing this. Are you interested? This is my previous sale history. This is who I worked with. They probably aren't there now, but it's still a good way to get in the door. And in those conversations, if you can't find an email, maybe just calling their office and asking for the best person to speak to about that area. They might not give you a number or a name, but they may give you just a general contact email, and at least you've got out there and tried it in that way.
Yeah, awesome. And Sandy, I don't know if there's a question here, if this is more just a comment. Wrote the first book on crystals in 7 days on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. And Barnes and Noble. It's a short book. Ready to publish my second book. Went to Maryland's Writers Association, had a critique. She said it was great, and she would be giving me my money back because she didn't have anything to tell me except to change the quote in the beginning. I want to publish before. So that's great feedback. Congratulations, Sandy. Like I said, I don't see a question there. I would be. I don't know who the person was providing the critique, but if you didn't, I would certainly, for me, I'd be like, can you write that as a testimonial about my book? I'm always looking to gather those testimonials there.
Yeah, definitely getting that as a testimonial. And also, if you have been, did you say you've been in Barnes and Noble? That's amazing as well. And if you can bring all of that together, but also asking the person that critiqued it, hey, like, do you have connections? Would you be willing to, pump me up to someone? Because that's already a huge plus. And it's a massive trending area. So you're on point with it, which is great.
Yeah, that's one of those things where, when someone gives you really good feedback, yes, it's nice to feel all warm and fuzzy because they like the book. And then you go, okay, great. Would you be willing to write that down? Would you be willing to make an introduction? Do you know anyone? And maybe the answer is no. Maybe 80%, 90% of the time, the answer is no. Yet that is the ideal time to ask, right? Right when they, if they're talking to you, they're feeling really good versus like, I've certainly have done this, like 3 weeks later, I'm like, I probably should have asked if they had a referral or something, right? Then you got to reach back out. And so here's who I was. Do you remember I was that person and they're like, yeah, I guess. So like anytime you can strike while the iron's hot, especially at these events where you're meeting people and networking, and right after someone gives you a really good, compliment or feedback on something, then, segueing that into the testimonial, the referral, the whatever it could be. All right, cool. Elliot was, and you can just confirm. So you did answer a little bit about the foreign rights. So if that helped Elliot, you can say yes, or if you have a further clarification you need. We're going to begin to wrap it up. I know there's a number of comments and questions that came in. I'm going to skim and see if there's anything that I feel would be especially useful to as many people as possible. Some of these things might be more personalized questions, and actually that's probably a pretty good segue. I think we covered the main things that came in via the questions. I certainly covered the main things that I wanted to cover coming on here. So let's say someone has more questions for you, Amy. Maybe they want your support with anything or whatever. How could a person learn more about you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's called publishersanonymous.com. So don't worry, no .au to make it confusing, where I offer editorial guidance and support starting from manuscript, sort of conception to completion. Also, if you're stuck on some ideas and you just need a little bit of help there, we can go and talk specifically on your genre, how we can get through those roadblocks together. Also, if you need any help with ebook creation, obviously that's something that I've been working on and something that I know from working in a traditional house as well, doing ebooks. I also do design. So for that cover design and also pitch creation, that's something that I'm able to help you facilitate. So I've done a lot of pitches in my time and helped a lot of people with their pitches who have come to me with really fun ideas for acquisition. So definitely excited to chat if you've got anything that you need help with. Even if you need help just typesetting, you know, a chapter of your book as well, it's something that we can work on together to make it the best it can be for those pitches. And it may be that, you know, you just want to pitch it to a small team, or you're interested in just, you know, you've written this pitch and you just want to give it to an agent. You know, I'm happy to look over it, give any advice, any editorial support as well there too. I'll just post it in the chat. So it's Publishers Anonymous. Oh, there you go. You've already done it.
Cool. Well,
it's been helpful. If you have any more questions, happy to answer as well.
Yeah, this has been great. If you got a particular takeaway from today, maybe mini takeaways, I'd love to know. You can drop that in the chat, your biggest takeaway. If there's a burning question, I can't promise we'll get to it, because I'm sure we could go on all day with, you know, hundreds of questions. But if there's a burning question that wasn't answered, you can go ahead and drop that in. If I feel like it's really critical, we can, you know, take another 30 seconds here to answer that. And as we begin to finalize this, Amy, anything that we haven't covered from your perspective that we haven't touched on that you feel is really important, or something maybe I should have asked you that I haven't asked you about yet?
I actually think we covered everything pretty well. And something which came up just organically, which was exciting, was about that crowdfunding opportunity. And that is definitely a different new way to get your book published. So if you do want it as an actual hardcover book, you know, you want it out there in the world, you're not getting anywhere else, definitely go crowdfunding and then see how you go in that way and just try it out. Ebooks, you know, it's amazing that we can actually self-publish and get our things out there now. And I just think it's such an exciting area. Don't be discouraged by getting a lot of rejections. I myself, when I send things out I get rejections as well. And I'm actually in the industry. So, you know, it is cutthroat. It's tough, but, you know, just stick to the creativity and the happiness that writing gives you, and don't let that be discouraging to your work, because someone is going to land with your work. And as we said, you know, definitely if someone loves it, get that testimonial from them, put it on your website, put it on the front cover of your book, you know, and yeah, just don't worry. There's so many people in the same boat. We all want to tell our stories. So yeah, we're here for you.
All right, beautiful, perfect. And yeah, that's an important thing about rejection, is that no matter how good your pitch is, your manuscript, there are some industries where you're going to expect well over half the people that you're presenting something to say no to it. And you know, it could be a sign to look at the manuscript or the writing itself. Many times, though, it could be due to just any number of reasons. Maybe they're all filled up. They don't have a demand for anything more. So it's not anything personal to you. Yeah. And so when you realize, oh, it's not personal, you know, it's going to be part of the game, so to speak, then you can go out there. You can certainly get the feedback to see what could be improved. And then also understand that hearing no is all part of the process to getting to the yeses, the people who it is a good fit for. So this has been fantastic. We do have a question here: is writing a calendar a book idea, or need a publisher? It's a little... Calendar is a totally different topic, but if you have a quick thought on that, Amy, we can cover that before we go.
I'd like to understand, do you mean writing a calendar as in having a diary, or is it more about like part of that? I guess it's really fleshing out those ideas. If that's a low content book, I would maybe think about doing it as an ebook first, or even just having it on your website that people can download, or, you know, on an Etsy or something like that might be helpful.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. And I'm also glad you brought up that crowdfunding thing as well. So for those of you, the plan is that I will be talking to another author, doing an interview about their crowdfunding success with a debut novelist, had really good crowdfunding campaign. So I think that's a whole nother avenue to explore.
Yes.
As well. So Amy, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for taking your time here today, answering the questions, sharing your expertise with all of us here.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye.